Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Welcome back. So, we will discuss today one fresh chapter of the book we are following. This is chapter number 4. So far we have completed chapter number 1 and chapter number 2, and as I mentioned sometimes earlier that chapter number 3 will skip. We are not skipping that, actually chapter number 3, if you see your book, that its title is Interdependence and Gain from Trade, right. So, that chapter actually whatever is there, principles of trade and all that, principle of absolute advantage and trade on the basis of that principle, this if you can remember, that is that principle is first proposed by Adam Smith, and then principle of relative advantage or comparative advantage proposed by David Ricardo, and trade on the basis of that principle. All we have discussed quite elaborately while we were discussing our 10 principle in chapter number 1, right. More specifically principle number 5, where trade can make each party better off. So, whatever is the content of chapter 3 of this book is there, we have elaborately discussed that in one of the principles in chapter number 1, and that is why we are skipping that chapter. Okay. So, today we will discuss chapter 4 of the book, chapter 4. Chapter 4, title of this chapter is Market Forces of demand and supply, this is the title of this chapter. Okay. So, as from the title you can have an understanding that we are going to discuss now what is demand, what is supply, what is market, all those things quite exhaustively, quite elaborately. Okay. So, first what is market? We have defined market so many times in this in the earlier lectures. Still, let me remind you what is market. Market is an organization where customers and sellers interact with goods and services. Okay. They exchange goods and services through this platform. Okay. That platform is called market. Okay. That is market. And then demand and supply. Okay. So, in any market there are certain commodities or certain services are supplier of those are there, which are the sellers. Okay. They are bringing those commodities or those services to sell to potential customers. Okay. And buyers or customers also come there, attend the market, reach the market to purchase those commodities and services, right. So, that is why in the market it is a platform where these two group of individuals, one are called say buyers, another are called sellers, and they are interacting each other with a particular commodity or a group of commodities or services or so many services, right. So, now, so what is demand? See, when we are telling demand, some sort of common sense or some sort of prior notion is immediately coming to your mind, as if the demand is my demand or your demand for a particular commodity, say bread. My demand is bread is as if the notion is coming to your mind as if it is my desire to get bread. Yes, it is my desire, or it someone's demand is basically his or her desire to get that commodity, but in economics by demand we do not simply refer the desire, rather something else. Desire, but that desire should be backed by the purchasing power, supported by the purchasing power. Say I may have a desire to get, say it is a big palatial kind of building, right, but I may not have that much money to purchase that building whatever price it has. Okay. So, effectively I am not generating any demand for that building. So, only when whatever price of that building is, if enough amount of money I have in my pocket, So, I am capable to purchase that from the market, then if I desire to get that building, it will be called demand. So, let me repeat, in economics, by demand we refer desire to get something, but backed by the purchasing power. Okay. So, that is the demand. Now, we are coming to the supply, exactly the same way. Supply, what is supply? Supply is that who are the producer, who are the potential sellers, they bring certain goods and services in the market, okay, with the expectation that with the expectation that they will be able to sell, or they will be able to find some customers for their product. Okay. So, what is supply in economics? Exactly the same thing, your desire or someone's desire to deliver a product, but that desire should be backed by his or her capacity. Okay. So, suppose I am a producer, I am producing say rice, I am a farmer, I am producing rice, okay, and you know that for any production activities or even to produce my rice, I have to hire certain factors of production. So, I have to pay that factors of production. Okay. So, I have to incur some cost of production. This cost of production is basically cost of factors of production, whatever I hired against their services. I must pay something, I must pay something to the land I hired, I must pay something to the labor I hired, similarly capital I hired and all, right. So, some of these total payments are called my total cost, right. So, now suppose to produce 1 kg of rice, I incurred say 20 rupees of total cost, right. Now, suppose market price is say 15 rupee per kg of that rice. Okay. So, although I am willing to sell that product in the market, but I will not be able to sell at the market existing prices 15 rupee per kg, right, because if I sell that, I have to incur some loss, right. So, in this particular case, although I have a desire to deliver that product in the market, that is not my supply, because my desire is not backed by my capacity. The kind of cost of production I incur in the existing market, I will not be able to deliver that product. Okay. So, let me repeat again, demand is desire to get something, but supported by the purchasing power, supported by the capacity to purchase that. Exactly the same way, supply is the desire to deliver some product, but supported by the capacity to deliver that at the existing market prices. Okay. So, these are the two definitions of demand and supply. Now, there is, if say suppose there is a commodity, right, say okay, let us take an invisible or indivisible commodity like say some liquid commodity, say milk, suppose milk, you know that it is indivisible kind of thing, right, a commodity, right. Suppose for me as a potential customer of milk, my alternative amount of quantity demanded, of course, how much milk I will, or how much quantity of milk I will willing to purchase, that depends on what is the price of milk. Of course, beyond price of milk there are so many other factors that determine my quantity demanded of milk, but in this particular case price is the most important factor. Okay. So, suppose my demand schedule is like this, say quantity and this is the price. Price is say per liter, LITRE, per liter, right. So, when price per liter is 200 rupee, this is in rupees terms. Okay. When it is 200 rupees per liter milk, yes, in the real life, no, in India price is not that much expensive, but suppose let us start with that kind of high, very high possible price. So, when 200 rupee per liter of milk, that is the price in the market, perhaps I will not demand anything. Okay. When it is 150 rupees, again I will not demand anything, because I am not willing to purchase milk at that much high prices. Okay. When it is 100 rupee, also still I will not demand anything. Suppose when it is say 90 rupee, perhaps I will demand for 1 liter. If it is say 80 rupee, I will demand for 2 liter. Similarly, 70 rupee I will demand for say 3 liter and so on. Okay. In that way, when it is 10 rupee, okay, I will demand for 2 liter like that. Okay. So, this kind of tabulated figures, what is this side, left hand side, what is that? Alternative amount of quantity demanded of that particular product, milk, okay, at various alternative possible prices in the market. Okay. When it is 200 rupees 200 per liter, I will not my quantity demanded for milk will be 0, generate any demand for that commodity. 150 rupee again 0, 100 rupee still 0, 90 rupee perhaps 1 liter, 80 rupee 2 liter and so on. So, this kind of tabulated quantity demanded vis-a-vis price, this kind of scenario is called demand schedule. Demand schedule is. So, this is demand schedule for whom? One individual customers. This is demand schedule for me. Okay. And when these figures we plot in a diagram, that is called demand curve. So, in economics usually we draw this kind of demand curve. So, you can understand the kind of numbers we have taken that in quantity demanded column and in price column. So, from those numbers we are getting a sense that perhaps my demand or my quantity demanded or milk at alternative possible prices, it is perhaps first as price is falling, my quantity demanded is increasing, right. Look at here, price becomes 90 to 80, my quantity demanded is increasing from 1 to 2 liter, 80 to 70 it is 2 to 3 liter and so on. So, price is falling, my quantity demanded is increasing, right. That is the law of demand. I am coming to the law of demand. Okay. That is the common sense all of us have, the way we behave in any market. One commodity is there, I am a potential customer of that commodity. Perhaps when price will increase under the ceteris paribus condition, given all other factors unchanged, when price will increase, I will try to consume less and vice versa, right. So, that this demand schedule, this pair of two figures, if we plot in a diagram, whatever that relationship will be shown by a line, it may be straight line, it may be not a straight line, but it will be a downward sloping line for sure, the kind of relationship we are getting. As price is falling, quantity demanded is increasing. So, if we measure quantity demanded Q in the horizontal axis and price in the vertical axis, right. So, perhaps we will get this kind of one line. Okay. It may be straight line, here the numbers we have taken, it is indirectly telling that we have taken a straight line, okay, straight line kind of demand curve, and perhaps this is the 100. Look at here, price 100 rupee. Okay. So, above this 100, whatever possible price is there, my quantity demanded is 0 only. Okay. At the 100 rupee price, still it is 0. Now, suppose this is 90, this is 80, this is 70 and so on, and it is increasing. Okay. When it is 90, that time this is 1 unit, when it is 80, this is 2 unit, when it is 70, this is 3 unit and so on. Okay. So, in that way we are getting a demand curve downward sloping. Okay. It may be straight line, it may not be straight line. Okay. Let me clarify one thing. Okay. So, what is the law of demand? Law of demand is basically its target is to capture people's individual or potential customers behavior in a market of that product, okay, vis-a-vis the price of that product what is existing in the market. Okay. So, that through law of demand we try to capture that relationship, that behavior of a customer. Okay. What is the law of demand? Law of demand tells that under the ceteris paribus condition, in other words, given all other things unchanged, if price of a commodity increases, its quantity demanded by a customer will fall and vice versa. Okay. Vice versa means what? If price falls, quantity demanded will increase. Okay. So, that is the things, law of demand. So, under the ceteris paribus condition, given all other things unchanged. So, what are those all other factors? We are coming to that one by one. Okay. Just one clarification here. So, suppose, okay, let us go to the next slide and we will play a demand curve we will draw. Okay. So, we are measuring quantity here, we are measuring price here, and suppose we have this kind of demand curve. Okay. So, look at here, first there is a contradiction here the way we are drawing this demand curve. Okay. Let me just hint you or put more emphasis here. Look at how you are telling this behavior through law of demand. We are telling that if price increases, quantity demanded will fall and vice versa. So, the way we are telling as if price is the determining factor here and quantity demanded is the determined factor. No, if price moves one direction, quantity demanded will move the opposite direction. In that way we are telling. So, price is a causal variable and quantity demanded is the caused variable here. Okay. It is the convention that any causal variable we usually refer when we plot them in the diagram. Say suppose I have one caused variable y and one causal variable, or sometimes it is called explanatory variable, explained variable. Okay. X is causal variable and y is caused variable. So, x is causing and y, that cause is reflected in y in that way. So, if I have a y variable which is caused variable and x is the causal variable which is causing the fact. Okay. So, that usually we refer y equals to fx kind through fx kind, this kind of relationship, right. And when we plot that, usually that caused variable we measure in the vertical axis and causal variable usually we measure in the horizontal axis, right. Look at here, when we are trying to capture law of demand through a demand curve, we are here doing just the opposite, right, because the way we told, let me repeat again, the law of demand, if price moves certain direction, quantity demanded will move the other opposite direction. In that way we are telling. So, in a sense we are alternatively we are telling that here price is the causal variable and quantity demanded the cost variable. So, then why we are for the demand curve we are not following the convention? Because here actually there is a British mathematician called Alfred Marshall. Alfred Marshall. He is a British mathematician who has done lot of works in theory of demand and all. Okay. So, actually he first draw this kind of, it is not a mistake, rather non-conventional way demand curve. So, we are following that to honor him, okay, although it is just the opposite of the convention. Okay. And that is why in higher order advanced level economics textbook you will see that this kind of curve where we are trying to capture this demand behavior through price quantity mechanism. Of one axis we are measuring quantity demanded, another axis we are measuring price, and through within that framework we are trying to capture quantity demanded price behavior of a customer in a market. Okay. The curve what we will get if we measure price in the vertical axis and quantity in the horizontal axis, usually this kind of curve is called inverse demand curve. More specifically, this curve should be called inverse demand curve, okay, which we follow in the advanced economics textbook. But for this, as you know, this course is very preliminary level economics text, and that is why throughout this course we will refer this as demand curve, although we will measure price in the vertical axis and quantity in the horizontal axis. Okay. Now, say suppose this is our demand curve. Okay. Now, the question is, what are the other factors that can influence this demand? Okay. So, obviously other factors, one of them is my income or the person for whom this is the demand curve, his or her income level. So, other factors or factors that determine demand are, of course, this is the quantity we are measuring in the horizontal axis, quantity of that commodity, and price in the we are measuring in the vertical axis, price of that commodity, right. Now, what other factors can influence the demand for that commodity? Okay. Of course, income of the consumer, or whose demand behavior we are trying to capture here, his or her income. Okay. Any other thing? Definitely price of related goods, related commodities or related goods or related service. If it is a service, this demand curve, if it is for a service, so price of the other related services. Okay, that also determine, because look at here, we are coming one by one of each of these factors. Okay. Anything else? Of course, expectation of about the future. Okay, expectation about the future, expectation about the future. Okay. Anything else? Of course, taste and preference of that consumer, and so on, right. These are the factors. Why and how they affect? Okay, look. So, when we told that law of demand, we mentioned that under the ceteris paribus condition, given all other things unchanged, right. So, given all other things unchanged means this sort of 4 factors we mentioned here, there may be lot of other factors, the surroundings within which the consumer belongs, and so many other factors also may affect, right. So, we have exclusively mentioned here 4 factors. These 4 factors or any other factors what we can think of that can have an implication of my quantity demanded of a particular commodity, right. We have to keep all other things unchanged, all those factors including those 4 and beyond these 4 whatever else can have an influence on my quantity demanded of a product, keeping all those things at some given level. If price of that commodity increases, I will try to consume less, and vice versa. That is the law of demand, right. Now, the question is, suppose all other things are kept unchanged, but income is actually, earlier my income was 100 rupee per day, now becomes say 200 rupee per day, my income becomes double. So, what will be the relationship between quantity demanded and price of that commodity? Definitely, perhaps I will have this kind of one shifted demand curve. So, initial demand curve was A B, later demand curve perhaps it was A prime B prime. Okay, one shifted demand curve, outward shifted demand curve. Why outward shifted demand curve? Look, okay. So, this demand curve, AB demand curve is telling that when price was that level, I was trying to consume this much, right. Now, my income level have increased, right. So, definitely I have more purchasing power now, right. So, at the same price perhaps I will try to consume little bit more now, okay. That is why. Let me clarify one thing here, okay. When we are drawing any curve like this demand curve, we are exclusively measuring 2 variables in the 2 axes. In this particular case, quantity demanded in the horizontal axis we are measuring, price of that commodity we are measuring in the vertical axis. If any factor that can have influence on quantity demanded other than price, and if something change happens in those factors other than price, your demand curve will shift its position from one position to another, like AB, from AB to A prime B prime. Okay. Look at here, what factor it is changing now? Income. Income is changing, then after at the changed income level, what is the relationship between still that price quantity of the same commodity? Okay. What is my behavior regarding those 2 variables if income changes? If suppose my income falls, perhaps my demand curve will shift inward this way, right. So, exactly the same way price of other related commodities, expectation about the future and all other things, all other factors what influence the demand or quantity demanded, right. So, if something happens or some change happens on those factors or any of those factors, my demand curve should shift from one place to another. Let me clarify, this shift may not be always parallel, okay. Maybe my initial demand curve is this, later demand curve is this kind, okay. It can also happen. It not necessarily that demand curve will be always parallel the way I draw here, I have drawn here, right. I have drawn that, but that is not the only possibilities. It can shift anyway depending on the circumstances, depending on the which of those other factors is changing, how that factor is changing and so on. Okay. So, just you know that it is not necessarily the case that your demand curve will shift always parallelly. Okay. Okay. So, then say price of related commodity, how that will influence? Okay, say suppose keeping all other things unchanged, say suppose this commodity is say tea, okay, and there is another commodity, we are talking about this commodity is tea. There is another commodity coffee which is closely related to tea. All of you know that it is a substitute commodity to tea, right. So, if tea price increases tomorrow, this is our demand for tea we are discussing. So, suppose coffee price falls way below than the current price level. Okay. Today coffee price say 10 rupee per say 1 gram, tomorrow it becomes say 2 rupee per 1 gram, suppose. Okay. Then what will happen? Without making any other change, under the ceteris paribus condition, whatever the tea price, the commodity whose demand curve we are discussing here, that price remains the same, income level remains same, expectation about future same, all other things are remain same. Then what will happen? Perhaps I will try to consume less amount of tea and more amount of coffee, because coffee becomes now cheaper, okay, way cheaper than what is coffee, how coffee expensive today, right. So, since tea and coffee are closely related commodities and those are substitute commodities, okay, so I can quickly switch from tea to coffee because coffee becomes way cheaper now. Okay. So, in this way prices of the related commodities also have an implication on my quantity demanded. How expectation of about the future? So, suppose today this commodity, suppose say it is tea, okay, again it is tea, okay. So, this year suppose climatic condition was very favorable for the tea plantation, okay, and we are expecting that tea production this year at the end of this year will be huge. So, I am expecting that tomorrow when production will be huge, perhaps we are expecting that price will be little bit less, right. So, in a long scale perhaps I will try to purchase little bit more in the next year. So, today I am trying to see when we are purchasing tea, I am not purchasing everyday tea from the market. Today I am purchasing, perhaps it will last for next 1 month, and then after 1 month it is finished, then I will go to purchase again, right. So, in that way if I expect that next month, okay, next month tea price will increase, fall quite significantly. So, I will try to perhaps purchase very less amount of tea this month, okay, because I am expecting that something will happen to the price of this commodity tomorrow or the next period, right. So, that is the thing. Taste and preference also in that way have an influence of on the quantity demanded of any product, right, because say suppose some commodity I do not want to consume at all, I do not like that commodity, okay. So, that will have some kind of implication, vis-a-vis I like very much one commodity, it will have, say suppose there is certain commodities which I do not care that how much price, whether price increases, price falls, does not matter, I always want to consume that commodity, right. So, then does not matter that what is the price, whether price is increasing very much or reducing very much, it will not have that much implication on my quantity demanded, right. Yes, the relationship, negative relationship will still prevail, but it will not affect that much, right. So, in that way lot of other factors will influence beyond the price of that commodity whose quantity demanded we are talking about. Let me clarify here another two concepts: change in demand versus change in quantity demanded. Look, when we are discussing about law of demand, we are talking about quantity demanded vis-a-vis price of a commodity or of a service, right. But when we are talking about other factors, we are telling this under the ceteris paribus condition or under all other factors unchanged, just one of the other factor other than this price is changing, what will happen? Demand curve will shift, right. That shifting of the demand curve is called change in demand, okay. So, enter demand, your desire to get that commodity, of course backed by or supported by your purchasing power, that thing changes. So, when we say suppose in a diagrammatical framework, when your initial demand curve was say AB kind of thing and later demand curve suppose say CD kind of thing, this movement AB to CD, that movement we will call change in demand. And suppose you were on the point E of the AB demand curve, and due to the price of that commodity falls, you moves from E to F point along the AB demand curve. So, this phenomenon is referred as change in quantity demanded. So, let me repeat, change in quantity demanded is basically referred your movement along a given demand curve, and change in demand, it is basically the shifting of the entire demand curve.